People love to talk about the rebrand like it's a marketing move, but what about when you're the brand? In this episode, we're unpacking the assumptions that come with changing your vibe, your style, or even your story. From you've changed to you're just trying to be someone else, let's talk about what it really means to evolve. Spoiler alert, you can outgrow things, people, and places without having to apologize for it. Welcome back to She's Probably Talking to Other Guys. I'm your host, Annie of the Banana Diaries. We're going to do a quick recap of last week's episode with Rylan, and then we're going to jump right in to why I love a good rebrand, and you shouldn't be afraid to try one yourself if you've been thinking about it. In Rylan's episode, we talked all about her journey as an author, inspirations, as well as a special surprise that she announced in the middle of the episode, which I didn't even know was happening, but I'm so excited for her. If you've been thinking about writing your own book, or maybe you just want to meet someone on social media who is quite possibly going to be one of your future biggest cheerleaders, Rylan is that girl. If you haven't tuned into her episode yet, I highly recommend checking it out. It was a long one because we had so much to talk about. Just a friendly reminder, I am not a therapist, psychologist, or expert in human behavior of any kind. Everything I share comes from personal experience, opinions, and lots of conversations over coffee with friends. If you're struggling with something deeper, I always encourage talking to a licensed professional. As always, this is a judgment-free, assumption-checking zone. Take what resonates and leave the rest. Today's episode is titled, They Said I've Changed, They're Right. Why rebranding is a refreshing and positive move. I feel like rebranding is a name for when you decide that you want to change your life, you want to live your life maybe a little differently, whether that's excluding certain people from your life, whether that's outgrowing a person, outgrowing a place, outgrowing a job. There are so many different versions of a rebrand, and sometimes they can be like smaller adjustments, and sometimes they're just the entire process of rebranding and changing your life. Let's go through a few informal definitions for rebranding. When you decide your old vibe no longer fits, so you start acting, dressing, or living like the person you actually are now. A personal plot twist, same main character, new energy. When your inner growth finally shows on the outside, deleting your old playlist, changing your wardrobe, and remembering who you are. The art of reinventing yourself without losing your essence. Hitting refresh on your identity, not because you were fake before, but because you've evolved. When who is she becomes a compliment. And growing up, glowing up, and giving yourself permission to start over. Those are all different variations of what a rebrand could be, but that is certainly not the entire list of them. As I mentioned before, there are so many different ways that you could consider a rebrand occurring in your life. Personally, I feel like I have gone through some for sure. Right now, I am in like the biggest rebrand of my life. So from personal experience, I know that there are people who would accuse me of being fake in the past. I know that there are people who would probably try to say that who I am right now is fake. But there's a clear reason as to why those people aren't in my life anymore. I feel like for me, my rebrand really had to do with the fact that I was not in an environment that I ultimately would thrive in. I was not in an environment that was productive for me. I was acting certain ways and, in a sense, trying really hard to fit in, when in reality, now I know that there was no point in ever really trying to fit in, because those weren't my people. Those aren't the people that I want to be around anymore. And I think that part of it is hard because you do have these thoughts in your mind of, okay, well, what are those people going to say now? But at the end of the day, you have to remember that if they're not in your life anymore, you chose that, and you chose that for a reason. And when it comes to something like this, and especially leaving an environment that was not meant for you, you have to remember why you made that decision in the first place. For me, it was a hard decision because there were a lot of things that I was paranoid about. We're not going to get into all of those details, but it took me a while to make the decision because I was scared to make the decision. And because I was so worried and I was overthinking everything that was going to happen moving forward, that it stopped me from making a decision that now, looking back, I really wish I made so much sooner. But again, everything happens for a reason. It's just trying to trust the process, trust in the timing, that everything that's meant for you is going to find its way to you. And those were a lot of things where I still don't have answers. I'm probably never going to get answers for why I encountered certain people in my life and why I had to go through certain situations in my life. But those are all things that a lot of times we have to find it in ourselves to move on without those answers ever coming to us. Or maybe you feel that you're owed some apologies that are most likely never coming. And however it is that you get yourself to move forward and to be okay with knowing that those apologies or whatever it is are never coming, I feel like that is all a part of your rebrand, and that is growth, that is you evolving. There is so much goodness that can come out of a bad situation. And I'm speaking from experience. In the bad situation, I mentioned I was scared. I didn't know what was going to come out of it. But for me now, looking back, I turned a situation where I really, truly lost myself. I lost who I was. I was crying almost, well, pretty much every day of my life. And it's just that it wasn't that one day I woke up and knew that I needed to make a decision. It was more just like I finally had enough and I needed to make a decision if I was going to end up having a shot at happiness, because I needed to be in a new environment. I needed to not be trying to force myself to fit in somewhere where I never belonged in the first place. And unfortunately, it took me a while to realize that I never belonged there. But now we know, and I'm saying these things because if you feel like you're in a space where you're scared to make a decision that could change your life, sometimes you need to do it scared. And I know that I'm not the only person who has said that, because I see it as quotes on my socials when I'm scrolling. I hear other like big business and inspiring individuals talk about this as well. And sometimes if you're scared, you just need to make the decision that you think is going to make you happy in the end. Let's move into segment number 1, which is assumptions about change itself. So the first assumption is people assume change means you weren't happy before. That could 100% be a correct assumption, because I was not happy before and I made a huge change to try to find and try to create happiness in my life. So I 100% believe that people do make a change because they're not happy. I know people who have left jobs. I know people who have left careers. And in some of these cases, they were smaller jobs just to try to pay the bills. And in other cases, these were people who thought that this was going to be their career. They thought that they were going to be at these jobs for the rest of their working lives. And they did make a change ultimately for happiness. And I feel like there is always judgment that comes along with it, for sure. I had a lot of decisions that I needed to make when it came time to making my change. And there were people who were talking ish about it. There were people who were saying that my decisions made no sense and this and that. And again, it just proved to me more that these were not the people that I wanted to be around, because at the end of the day, no matter what the change is, your people may not agree with you all the time, but they should support you. So if they agree with you and support you, that's amazing. If they disagree with you and then choose not to support you and then start drama and gossip and rumors and just talking badly about you and how, oh, that's never going to work, maybe consider that those aren't your people. Because there's a way that you can be friends with someone or you can support with someone and you don't have to fully agree with every decision that they make. Like 100%. There are so many times where my best friend and I, we would 100% make different decisions on things. But at the end of the day, we're going to support each other no matter what, because we're best friends and I want her to make the decision that's going to make her happy. So I 100%, now that I'm talking about it more and more, I totally believe that this assumption is right and that there are people who assume that when you make a change, it's because you weren't happy. Assumption number 2, people assume you're changing for attention and not growth. I mean, I believe that maybe some people do try to change for attention, in the sense that when I was in the situation, I feel like I lost myself because I was changing to try to fit in somewhere. I wouldn't call that a rebrand, because I feel like a rebrand needs to be something that's positive, the way that I would look at it. But I found myself changing and trying to fit in somewhere where I didn't belong. And it definitely wasn't for growth, because none of that was helping me grow whatsoever. It was causing me more stress, if anything, because I just felt like no matter what I was trying, I didn't fit in. And when I did decide to change, it resulted in growth. And any attention that I got from those people I was trying to fit in with was not positive attention whatsoever. But I would say that definitely there are people who will change for attention, and it's not always for the best. I mean, maybe sometimes it is, but at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself if this is who you are and if you're okay with this happening in your life, and if you're okay with the person that you're becoming when you change. Assumption number 3, people assume rebranding is fake, like you're pretending. A rebrand, to me anyway, needs to be you becoming either an evolved version of yourself or a version of yourself that has grown. And to me, I would never be able to fake a rebrand of myself. Why would you want to be fake? Because it's just a little charade that you're putting up. And to me, I would just never understand why you would want to be fake. I would honestly rather say how I really feel and speak up for myself than just go along with what's happening or whatever the topic at hand is. Because I just feel like being fake is such a waste of time. If someone's not going to like who I am, I'm going to move on, and I'm not going to consider for a second about abandoning myself just so these people like me. That's just not my vibe. And I can understand how that can be something that's scary, especially if you are someone who is a people pleaser, or you're someone who just really feels like you want to be liked by everyone. If you're fake, what part of yourself are you losing? And are the people that you're gaining by being fake even worth it? Next assumption, people assume if you're confident now, you were insecure before. I totally believe that. I mean, being confident sometimes can be a fake it till you make it situation. I don't judge you for that whatsoever, not at all. As a professional dancer, there are so many moments where I'm feeling insecure. Whether it's, people have made comments about the costume that I'm wearing, or I just maybe feel like, oh, I should be better at this by now, things like that. I think that those thoughts tend to pop in regardless of what environment you're in or what your career path is or whatever it may be. I just think that it's normal to feel insecure sometimes, and that confidence is something that needs to be built. It doesn't necessarily come right away. Congratulations if it does, that's amazing. But I think for most people, confidence is something that comes with time, and that's okay. I'm going to give you a little thought here before I close this segment on change. What if rebranding is just another form of alignment and you're catching up to who you were always meant to be during your journey? Segment number 2 is assumptions about identity. People assume your past version was a lie. I don't believe that could be true in my case, for sure, or for many people who are experiencing a rebrand. Again, the concept is about growth. The phrase, you learn from your mistakes, people don't just say it like to say it. You truly can learn from your mistakes. So for me, it's not your past version was a lie. You were learning along the way. Do you like who you are? Is this who you want to be? Through various moments that happened, they were learning experiences, and those are the experiences that are going to teach you who you want to be if you don't know already. But again, it's just everybody makes mistakes. If someone's going to claim that they've never made a mistake, I would be extremely, extremely skeptical of that. But I think that it's so, what's the word I'm looking for? I think it's disrespectful of someone to say that your past version was a lie. I think that when you experience something and then you go through a period of change, growth is absolutely normal. And there was an episode where we talked a little bit about how your past doesn't have to carry with you into your future. And there was another portion of an episode where I said, if someone tries to throw your past against you in the future, I think that looks really bad on that person, not on you. You changed, you grew, no matter maybe what it was. Maybe it was a really terrible situation. Maybe it was a way that you were acting in the past. And then again, with time, you realize that, okay, well, maybe the person that you were around was a manipulator and you didn't know it. Maybe people you were around were narcissists and you didn't know it. There are so many different things that could have been happening that you didn't know in the moment. And you need to forgive yourself for that. And again, this is a reason why I spoke out in a previous episode, something about cancel culture. I truly believe there are people who are out there, and when there's someone from your past and you're not this person anymore that you were when you met them, or maybe you learned something about this person and you distance yourself for a reason. I think that there are always people who don't want to let go of that version of you. They almost want to villainize you in a way. And then when you're really successful, these people want to try and like throw your past in your face and accuse you again of lying in your past or maybe being fake, things like that, when all along the way you were learning that, okay, this is a situation I'm in now. I don't like it. Maybe I don't know why I don't like it. Maybe there is something going on here that I'm not okay with, but I don't know yet because it's happening right now. And in the moment, you can't step out of that necessarily to take a look and examine the entire situation as it's happening. There are people who 100% tested my patience. There are people who 100% were manipulating me. There are people who 100% were pushing my buttons on purpose. And in the moment, I didn't know. In the moment, it was like a fight or flight response that was happening, and I didn't know. There are so many aspects of me and my past and my life that I have learned like very recently. And it's not always something easy to go through, but I think that when people are accusing you of lying and people are accusing you of pretending to be someone or to do something that you're not okay with, it says more about those people than it says about you. And at the end of the day, it can be really hard to realize that. I mean, something as simple as someone writing something mean on social media about you. Like, that says so much more about that person, that they took time out of their day to try to trash you. And it's very hard to just let it go, but you have to remember that you don't associate with these people for a reason. Your past wasn't a lie. I mean, maybe in some cases for some people it could be, but for the most part, we're talking about positive rebrands, right? So if you went through something, maybe it took some time for you to realize what was happening. Maybe it took some time for you to realize that you needed to get away from that space, and that is okay. But that doesn't mean that your past was a lie. You were learning from mistakes, you were learning from experiences, you were learning, and now you know. That's the important part. If you don't know, you have some more learning to do. People assume you can't be more than one version of yourself. For that assumption, I have to say that that is incredibly closed-minded. I think that being open-minded is something that is very important in a rebrand. If you're not open to change, how is a rebrand going to happen? If you're not open to growth, how are you going to evolve? Things like that. So for me, if you're going to assume you can't have more than one version of yourself, that is just setting yourself up for a loss, in my opinion. People assume you're confused if your vibe keeps shifting. I wouldn't really say confused. I think that sometimes it takes some time to figure yourself out. Sometimes it takes time to figure out what you want, especially if it's a hard decision. But I don't think that means necessarily that you're confused. If you are confused, give yourself some time to figure out what's going on. But I don't necessarily think that if you keep trying to find what's right for you, that it means that you're confused. People assume there's one true version of yourself and that change is equal to instability. Again, I think that that's just a very closed-minded assumption, and I don't believe that is instability at all. I think that change is a beautiful, beautiful thing. The little thought that I want you to have in your mind as we close this segment is that evolving doesn't erase who you were, it's just adding some depth. If you evolve, you don't have to forget who you were in the past. Unless, if you feel better forgetting about it, You do you, boo. Segment number 3 is assumptions about social media and rebrands. I feel like my social media has gone through so many different phases. But again, I think it's just going along with the phases that I'm going through in my life. I don't change my feed based on trends. That's one thing that you'll see is I am not a trend chaser. I have way too much going on to even consider like figuring out what trends are sometimes. So yeah, assumption number 1 is people assume if your feed changes, you're chasing trends. That is definitely not the case. I think for sure my feed changes based on kind of what's going on in my life. Like recently, I decided that I wanted to add an entire portion about home decor and transforming my home space because that has been something that became really important to me, is that I needed a space that was mine, that made me feel comfortable, that made me feel like, okay, this is my space, nobody else is here, and I love that. And it reflects my personality, it reflects so many different pieces of my life. And that's one of the main reasons I decided to jump into this new series. And again, it's just something that I decided I really wanted to highlight more. And if I was feeling like I really needed a space for myself, other people probably are too, and maybe they just need some inspiration to do that. Up next, people assume your new aesthetic is a new personality. You know, if you've been here before, I talk about how my Instagram profile and my social media profiles say that being yourself is greater than any aesthetic. I don't follow them. I can barely keep up with them sometimes. So at the end of the day, I'm just going to be my own aesthetic. And for people who do like to do that, there is no judgment towards you whatsoever. I think that it's fun to constantly try new things. And I think that if maybe trying different aesthetics is your thing, then do it. It doesn't mean that you're taking on a whole new personality every single time you do it. But if you are, that's okay too. No judgment whatsoever. People assume you owe an explanation for why you stopped sharing certain parts of your life. I talked about this in a previous episode about who deserves a front row seat to your life. And I used just celebrities as an example, and I'm still going to do that. There are celebrities who share a lot on social media, and when there's a topic that maybe they decided to stop sharing, or maybe somebody in the news talks about it, but this celebrity doesn't want to address it, I do feel that not everyone, certain fans feel entitled to know everything there is to know about this celebrity, whoever it may be or whatever the case is. And I just think that at the end of the day, that is one, feeling entitled to know something about everyone's life. I don't love that. I think that that is very wrong of the person who is feeling that they're entitled to know. I've had a lot of nosy people in my life in the past, and it got to a point where I was just like, no, I am like not telling you this. No, absolutely not. That's a hard pass. Or there were people who wanted to know what my next move was going to be, and absolutely not. I am not telling these people that. So that's what that reminds me of, is that when people assume they're owed an explanation for something, absolutely not. You can literally say no and move on. You can say yes to something and move on. I don't believe there's an explanation owed for really anything. People assume consistency means being the same all the time, but it can mean growth too. Yeah, that is definitely wrong in my opinion. So let's use the gym as an example. When I'm in the gym, the fact that I don't even know what I started deadlifting at, I don't know, but the fact that my max for deadlifting is currently 205 pounds, If someone had told me I was going to be doing that much and deadlifting that much weight, maybe I would have believed them, but I think in the beginning I would have been probably like, okay, sure. But the day that I deadlifted and had a new max of 205, I was like, oh my goodness, that is insane. And again, that's because of consistency. So my consistency in the gym led to growth that led to me deadlifting 205 pounds like it's easy, right? My consistency doesn't mean that I was deadlifting the same weight that I began at, which honestly, like, I don't even know what it was, but it was nowhere near 205 pounds. So I am going to say that absolutely not. Being consistent does not mean that you're constantly getting the same results every single time. A little thought in your mind is there's pressure sometimes of keeping your brand cohesive, but you can also let your brand transform along with you. So if you're your own brand on social media, what you start with doesn't have to be what you end with. You can keep changing it up every now and then. I'll use my feed as an example. I personally don't like going to someone's page and tapping on a photo and then it opens up a reel that has nothing to do with the photo. That's just me. So mine, if you go to my page and you open up a reel that says besties for the resties, it is a meme about best friends. And there is a story for me behind that. My best friend lives nowhere near me and I miss her so much. And this is truly how we connect with one another. I literally had an app tell me that they would not verify me as one of their creators because I have those memes on my page. I am totally fine not being in your circle of creators if that means you're going to make me change to not be myself. So that's a little example of why, one, I have those very specific pictures. I like for you to know what you're going to be clicking on. So if it says, I posted one recently about steak, like you're going to open it and you're going to find me cooking steak. Like that's what it is. There's no secret there. So again, I think that you need to do what you want to do when it comes to your feed. It's your feed. And you need to make the decision of if you're going to authentically be you or if you're going to do things to make other people like you. And I mean that in the nicest way possible. I don't mean that in a bad way whatsoever. For me, it was easy for me to tell this app no. Like, being myself is so much more important than being a creator for you. And it's different for everyone. No judgment from me whatsoever. Segment number 4 is assumptions about confidence and perception. People assume you only rebranded because someone broke your heart. I feel like that's a really common assumption, especially like when people assume that girls get bangs because someone broke up with them or they were going through something traumatic. Sometimes I get bangs just because I feel like getting bangs. There doesn't have to be a story behind it. People assume the glow up is about revenge. I feel like maybe this would have been more accurate in the past. I think that it was almost normal that people would have a glow up in order to get revenge. I think that now it's more that the quote unquote revenge is you being you and just being happy and no revenge. Because why would you want to spend more time thinking about the people who have wronged you? I think that what goes around comes around. And I'm a big believer in that. So for me, it's not revenge. If you deserve it, karma is going to find you, and I am going to stay out of it whatsoever. Because if I chose that you're not going to be in my life and I made a decision for that, I'm not going to stoop down to your level and try to get revenge. That's just silly to me, and I wouldn't waste my time thinking about you. Yay! Sorry, not sorry. People assume your confidence came overnight. This reminds me of the episode about becoming an overnight success is it's all building up. The confidence is building up a little bit at a time. I still get really nervous before I go out dancing, and I'm confident once I'm out there, but there's still those little voices that make me nervous right before. There's that feeling in my stomach that makes me a little bit nervous. But again, it's every experience builds a little bit more on that and helps you to become more confident. I don't believe, in my case anyway, that confidence came to me overnight. It definitely doesn't. I'm still nervous about this podcast. I'm still nervous about people listening to it, and is it good enough? Things like that. So I think that at the end of the day, confidence is different for everyone. And as you're growing and as you're learning, there are some moments where maybe you're not going to feel so confident, but then there are others where you're feeling amazing, and that's totally normal. People assume your rebrand means you think you're better than everyone now. To me, that just comes from maybe someone being upset that you left them in the past, maybe someone feeling insecure about themselves, maybe someone wishing that they had your confidence, but they don't. So they're going to make these negative assumptions about you now. So I guess what I'm saying is that does not sound like a you problem. That sounds like a them problem for the people who are saying these things. So keep on shining, keep on glowing. It is their problem, not yours. Something to think about at the end of this segment is the real rebrand is nothing, in my opinion, to do about aesthetics. It has more to do about your energy. How has your energy shifted? How has your energy changed? And what are you going to do to keep that positive energy rolling? It is 100% normal to have moments, maybe even days where you're doubting yourself and maybe your energy is down. That is okay. But in a rebrand, how are you going to keep this energy moving forward? Segment number 5, this is the last segment for today, the personal rebrand checklist. I think that maybe journaling can help you with this. I think that remembering who maybe you're trying to steer away from can help you with this. Think about these questions to reflect on them. So number 1 is, what's something I used to believe about myself that I don't anymore? I'll use an example is, again, the situation that I got myself away from. I used to believe that I was not enough, that nothing I did was ever good enough. These people always wanted more and more and more. And the supportive people would have told me how amazing I was doing. You're doing amazing, sweetie. And they would have been in full support, and maybe along the lines of more, okay, like you reached this level, how are we going to get you to the next level? Versus when I was feeling like I wasn't enough, and these people would just keep coming down harder and harder and harder and harder, not because I wanted any type of, what's the word? Like I didn't want a celebration every single time I achieved something. It's just more that when I was trying to get to the next level and there were people who were already at that next level I wanted to get to, is they were almost trying to keep the, what's the word? They were trying to keep the little tips and the little tricks for me to get to the next level. They were keeping them to themselves because they didn't want me to be on the same level as them. So again, I think that when it comes to what's something you used to believe about yourself that you don't believe anymore, is like, I know that I'm enough, and if I get rejected, it's redirection. Number 2, what's something I've started doing that feels more me? I read that very slowly. I apologize. So let's think for a second. If I share something, for me, it's actually giving myself permission to take a little bit of time off. I was burnt out for so many years because I just was like a steam train that never ever stopped rolling. And it explains why I was so burnt out. I was sick so often. I was exhausted all the time. And now for me, I take so much more time to take care of myself. And let's say, for example, there's a day that I'm supposed to be filming an episode of this podcast. I know now that it's going to come out with a certain tone, or I'm going to sit here and I'm going to be recording and I'm just not going to get anywhere and I'm not going to like how it's coming out. So for me, it's about closing my laptop and being like, okay, let's reframe your mind. Let's go in the sauna blanket. Let's go grab a coffee and let's come back to this tomorrow. So I think that I would answer that question personally by saying that I give myself permission to take a moment if I need a moment. And number 3, what version of myself am I no longer performing for? For me, personally, I feel like this would be something that I already mentioned earlier, so I don't want to go on too much more about it. It would be that I'm no longer trying to entertain people who were never supposed to be a part of my future in the long run. So I am doing things for myself now. I am doing things that I feel like could help other people get through the situation I was in. Or maybe you can find some inspiration in making a change that you're afraid to make, a positive change. Of course, this episode is about positive changes and a positive rebrand. So again, I'm not trying to make decisions for other people anymore to fit in with them. I'm doing me and who I currently am right now. All right, let's wrap it up for today. Personally, I feel that the best rebrands are the ones that bring you closer to who you truly feel like you are. And that's okay if you literally feel like you're going through so many rebrands to find yourself. The goal is that at the end of this, you know who you are, you know what you want, you know what you don't want, and that at the end of the day, you can just be happy being yourself. Next week, I have a very special guest. She is bold, she is spicy, and I'm so excited for you to tune into our episode. I met her on social media and I'm so happy that I did. She has been not only an inspiration as an entrepreneur, but just her personality. I absolutely love her energy and she's so fun. So I'm really excited for you to tune into next week. Thank you so much for tuning in. Follow. She's probably talking to other guys on social media. It is a shortened handle because she's probably talking to other guys. It's too long. So you can find it at SPTTOG Podcast. This podcast is streaming on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon, and Apple Podcasts. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I can't wait for you to listen in next week.